Okay, welcome everyone at home. We're just finishing a little grounding exercise where we feel with our hand on our belly, just below our navel, our center. It's a spot that's described as, in lots of different traditions, Eastern traditions especially, as being approximately 2 inches below the navel and then in toward the center of our body. And feeling the ground as we do that to help bring us into our bodies more fully. And resting there as we have a conversation about. And I thought we'd have an inquiry. We could have a little conversation instead of just me yakking at you about what happens when we start to talk about this thing called self-compassion. And I think this is an important inquiry to have because I can sit and talk about it all day, but if it doesn't resonate or make sense, or you don't have any idea what that word means, then it's going to kind of just roll off, right? It won't stick. So, does anybody want to volunteer what they think self-compassion means? Or how does it strike them? Like, what's the immediate reaction, thoughts that pop up, or emotions, or what's like that, the immediate reaction that happens at the mention of that word? Is it something like, oh, what is that? Or is it something like, ooh? Okay. Or does it come in the form of thoughts?
I see right away, don't criticize yourself.
Ah.
Or when you start to think, oh, you idiot, those types of words.
Right.
It's like, reverse your thinking and stop negative talk to yourself and about yourself.
Okay. Yeah. And how easy is it to stop that?
Well, it took a while, but when you're conscientious of it, and when the more you do it, and the more you realize it does work. It really makes a difference.
So you practice, and then does it get easier?
Yes. And then you can project that onto other people. So I didn't figure out, but I kind of started with myself, and then I could genuinely then start to turn my thoughts with other people around.
Wow.
It took a while, and it's still a work in progress.
Yes, as are we all. Okay. We're all works in progress.
Hopefully.
Yeah. Well, progress is different speeds for different people, right?
I'm about the same way. If I do something wrong, I think it's not the end of the world. Just let it go. Try not to repeat it. Move on. Yeah. So yeah, it's hard. It's hard, and it's constant. I constantly mess up. Don't get me wrong. But when you do, it's nice to constantly remember that it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So we can have conditioning that lets us know, right? This habitual things we were taught probably a long time ago that let us know how we're supposed to treat ourselves whenever things go wrong. This is one of the best ways to find out how self-compassionate you are. To observe moments when things don't go as expected, right? When you don't have the energy you'd like to have in some moment, or you don't feel as kind or accepting as you'd like to of someone or some situation. Right? Or plans get broken. Right? Somebody disappoints us. Right? Lets us down. Or we let ourselves down. Right? Don't perform as we'd like to. Those are the moments that we want to check and see what's happening. Right? What's happening here? What's happening here? We can check for thoughts, right? Like the name, it can be outright name calling, right? Or we can check for stuff happening somewhere, right? Usually from here up, somewhere in the body, and probably in the form of constriction, right? Some kind of tightening. Yeah. And we can check for emotion if we're familiar with and we know how to label emotion. We might recognize things like shame or guilt or inverted anger, right? So beating up mad at self. Right? Probably all kinds of things, sadness, disappointment, aversion, right? Don't like self, trying to get away from self, right? Trying to be something else, someone else, wishing to be someone else. So these would all be signs, and certainly not the only ones, that we're unable to hold that compassion for ourselves. We're unable to hold that stance. And I named the conditioning, the training that we receive, that we all receive, formally and informally by life and people whose care we've been in. But what other things do you think contribute to the lack of self-compassion? Because it's a pretty big problem. It's a pretty universal problem, especially in Western countries.
Environment.
Mm-hmm. Can you say a little more about that?
Well, like you said, just, if you work outside the home or inside the home, if you work for somebody else, sometimes, if you have siblings or a spouse, that they all at some point can, say you're wrong, or, you're not doing it right. Don't be stupid, and you just take it all seriously.
Mm-hmm.
You take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to just kind of let that go and say they're having a bad day or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not really me.
Yeah. So ongoing judgment,
Right.
that happens in the present.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it reinforces,
Right.
things we may have already learned. Yeah.
I think also our culture sends us all these messages about things you're supposed to do and be, that you're supposed to live a certain way and make a certain amount of money, be on the fast track at work and have a nice house, and have this and have that, and do this and do that. And if you don't live up to those expectations, which of course nobody does, you feel, at least, like, feel bad, you're not as worthy, you're a failure. The whole coulda, shoulda, woulda, I should have done this, I should be doing that.
Yeah. And so when you say culture, where are you aware of getting those ideas from?
I think part of it's from the media.
Mm-hmm.
Part of it's just from interactions with people, and where they're either criticizing you or they're talking about the great things they're doing. And you feel like, I should be doing that too.
Yeah.
How many times do you meet somebody and the first thing they said is, "So what do you do for a living?" I never ask people that. What do I care? It doesn't. It's not them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's true that we do. I mean, that is one of the first things we ask people. So what do you do?
Mm-hmm.
Do.
Well, I think you're looking for common things to discuss so that you can get to know somebody. It's
Right.
not going to be with somebody monitoring and saying, okay, let's get right down to the self-compassion part of your life.
Last year.
No, and now that's something totally different, but as far as your vocation, sure, you know, because we're all looking for those common things that we share. And I
Yeah.
actually like diversity. So if someone's doing something different than me, I want to hear about it.
Yeah.
I know for myself, I just have real high expectations for myself, not for other
Mhm.
people. I can recognize them as just being beautifully human. You
Uh-huh.
know, but for myself, I don't let myself off the hook.
Yeah.
So, you know, that negative self-talk or you should be able, shoulda, coulda, woulda. It's kind of stuff. It just, you know, so
Yeah.
self-compassion is probably a real challenge for me.
Yeah.
Just not, really,
You're
pretty
compassionate.
yeah,
to everyone else.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
but I'm pretty darn hard on myself. You know?
And she keeps it to herself.
Yeah, I do. But,
Yeah.
yeah, so you know, conditioning,
Mhm.
your family makeup, the
Yeah.
messages
Mhm.
that you received early on, and you go back home and you fall right back into the same
Oh my
pattern.
gosh, it happens, yeah.
And-
Totally regress.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So self-compassion is a really good topic for me.
Yeah.
Seriously.
And I think not just listening, but the way that we're inquiring and thinking about and hearing each other talk about, as you were talking about, you know, it's for everyone else, but not for me. I was struck in that moment as you were saying it by how that could, and wondering how that might create a feeling of separation or alienation from others. When we say others deserve it, but not us, right? What do you think is happening there when we set ourselves apart and say other people are worthy of it, but we're not? Or we have to hold ourselves to a higher standard. Right? What do you suppose that's about? When we hold ourselves to a higher standard. It's kind of something we could all get behind, right? Right? Who can fault that?
You mean like a martyr?
Yeah. That would fit the,
Yeah.
yeah. What do we get out of that?
Sense of worthiness.
How do we get a sense of worthiness from being a martyr?
I'm gonna go maybe a different direction. Playing the victim, not by becoming the martyr, then oh, everything's okay, I'm okay, and eventually you're not. And so then I guess I just know people that they're always this victim, always a victim. And we're all victimized at some point. But do you choose to come out of that or have some self-compassion and learn some skills, or do you stay in that victim mentality? So I see that, yes, self-compassion is good for everybody else, but not for me. And it's like, oh, well, because I'm strong and I can do it.
I think that's the thing, right? If we always want to be the giver and not the receiver, right? Strong. So if it's good for everybody else, but I'm up here, right? I hold myself to a higher standard. Right? So you're right in that I don't think anybody ever really wants to be a victim or intends to be, but you're pointing right at the unsustainability of that position of being the martyr, of being the giver. There's this guy named Karpman, and you can look up on, there's a pretty decent description on Wikipedia of the Karpman drama triangle, Karpman. And somebody first told me about it at the beginning of my counselor training, and I was like, is there science behind that? And then after working in community mental health for a few years, I was like, oh yeah, that's happening. That's happening. And the triangle has 3 roles. So one is the rescuer, one is the victim, and one is the persecutor. And the role that most people like and try to play is the rescuer. And the thing that I try to help people see, and I learned how to see for myself as well, is that when we set ourselves up in the rescuer role, we eventually wind up being both the victim at some point and also the persecutor. Because what happens? So say I'm only going to be rescuer and I keep helping somebody or lots of somebodies. And then pretty soon I feel exhausted, right? Everybody always wants something. They don't appreciate me. I'm exhausted. I can't keep this up, right? So then I'm a victim because everybody is always, right, coming to me for stuff. And then I might even move into the persecutor role and be like, you victim, why can't you figure it out and start taking better care of yourself? Right? So we can lapse into these other 2 roles because the rescuer situation isn't sustainable. The reason it's not sustainable is because the roles in the triangle, the people that are playing, and you always need people to play the other roles. If you're going to be rescuer, you need people who are going to be able to play the other roles. The problem is that the people are not equals in the drama triangle. And that's the best way to figure out if you're being a rescuer or if you're being what in the empowerment triangle, the equal or the similar role, but the healthier role is coach. Right? So rescuer is doing for, and then coach is going to be I see you. It's an I-thou relationship, right? I think that you have everything you need to do whatever you need to take care of yourself, right? But if I don't think that about you, then I'm going to do it for you. I'm going to take care of you, right? So at any time we can ask whether we're in the rescuer role or not, based on whether we think the person that we're helping has what it takes to figure it out themselves. And think about how we all have probably a little exposure to how coaches behave. I mean, sports coaches, not so great sometimes, but I mean, there's a definite belief that the person they're coaching can measure up, can do it, right? Can come through, can overcome. So we can figure out which role we're playing and how healthy we are based on, are we being rescuer or are we in the coach role? Do I feel like this person is an equal, or do I feel like they can't do it for themselves? Okay. And for the people that can't do it for themselves, we need to be very clear that it's a caregiving role. And there's a high amount of stress correlated with caregiving roles. It doesn't matter if you're a mom or you're caring for your parents, or even if you're just taking care of your household and your spouse. right? And if you also work in an occupation where you're taking care of people, teachers are taking care of people, any kind of health aid, I would contend, I've got the experience to back it up, anybody in a customer service role or capacity is a caregiver, right? You're dealing with other people's psychological stuff in that encounter, right? And it's impossible to interact and not walk away, right? Our